Hi everyone, welcome back to the Zicast. I'm your host Ryan Ziaks, and today I'm joined by Realtor Rylee Massoni.
Hi.
Awesome, awesome. Great to have you here, Riley. So, of course, on my show, I interview people, get to know them better, get to hear their stories, and I'm excited to learn more about you. So, how about you kick things off by telling us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am obviously from Connecticut. I imagine most of your guests are from Connecticut. I'm 23 and I'm a realtor. And I've been a realtor for almost 2 years now. Definitely newer though to it. And I'm also a student, so I'm still in college. I'm doing a master's degree still. I graduated from my undergrad in 2024. So definitely very different career paths on both ends there. But I know today we're going to be talking more about real estate, which is cool. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Amazing, amazing. And where'd you go to school?
At Southern, and I am still there now doing the master's.
So, yeah, let's jump into the questions. And I love to ask you, what made you want to become a realtor?
Okay, so it's a long story. So I'm from Wallingford originally, and I was looking for a job when I was a teenager in high school. And someone referred me to this real estate company, and they were like, "Oh, I know them. They're looking for like a receptionist. Like you should go and interview." So I was probably 16 or 17 and had not had many jobs before. So I went there. I met them. I interviewed. They were so kind. I work at Dan Combs Real Estate. That's the company. And they hired me to be their receptionist. And so I worked as a receptionist at the company for a few years. And then I went to college, so it was kind of on and off with my college schedule. But I learned a lot about real estate just by being there and being the receptionist. And you get a lot of tasks, and you see a lot of the documentation process and things like that. Learn how to use the systems that you need to use as a realtor. So that was already helpful that I kind of knew how to do that. And my two bosses, like the owners of Dan Combs Real Estate, they did ask me about getting my license because then you're allowed to do a lot more. Because if you're not a licensed realtor, like you can't answer certain questions over the phone. There's a lot of like restrictions on what you can and cannot do. So then if you have the license, it's much easier. You can go show properties, you can do open houses, all that type of stuff that I could not do as a secretary. So it was the summer of 2023. I did the real estate classes, I did them online. I think it's about 8 weeks or so, and I was online like 3 nights a week. So it is like a little bit. You do have to sit for like 3 hours per class, but it's like short term, which is nice. And then you have to take like a licensing test. So I got into it kind of because it would kind of help me in my work in the office. And like I thought maybe I would end up selling someday. And also because I was a college student at the time, I kind of was like, this might be a good way to pay my student loans and quick because you make kind of like larger sums of money like faster when you're selling and helping buyers.
Amazing. So it's almost like you had an internship there, so to speak, as a secretary in a way where you're able to kind of shadow people, see the process, and tell if you're interested. Was there a specific moment when you were there as a secretary that really, or as a receptionist that made you really want to do the job, if you can recall?
Um, I don't know if there was like a specific moment, but I just think like I reached this point of this would be something like really cool to do for myself. And my family was really supportive because they're really into real estate and they were like, you should do this. And like, of course, only if I wanted to.
Mhm.
I was like, why not? I already kind of had a good idea of what to expect. So, and I had a lot of support because luckily the office that I work in, we are like a little family, which is like not common in bigger,
Mhm.
offices and stuff. So I don't know. I just felt really supported. So I was like, why not?
Amazing, amazing. And I'm curious, like when you actually jumped into the job, what was really the kind of what surprised you the most about the whole process?
I think after you finally pass that licensing exam, you're just happy. But then you realize there is a good amount of expenses to it that a lot of people don't know about coming into it. But you can definitely make a good profit depending on, how much a business you're doing. Um, and there's always new stuff to learn. I think with how the housing market has changed drastically, as like
Mm.
maybe you've seen in the past few years, like since COVID, I think that's been really shocking to me, just kind of seeing the urgency from like buyers and stuff. And it's like pretty competitive. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, very much so. And can you take us more into how the housing market has changed since in the post-pandemic era?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everything has just gotten more expensive. I don't
Mm.
know if you feel that way since COVID started. So, and that includes housing. And if I recall correctly, I know that a lot of people in New York kind of like rushed into Connecticut to
Mm.
buy properties. And I'm assuming like maybe that was to get out of those close-knit neighborhoods and
Mm.
like that city environment because it's probably a lot easier to get sick, when you're like living amongst a lot of other people. And in New York, a lot of people, they make more money than people in Connecticut sometimes. So they were able to really outbid a lot of Connecticut people quickly. And it was kind of driving up these prices. And there was probably a lot of other factors too. And then now you're in these like bidding wars
Mm.
with people that you can't compete against, unfortunately. So that made it really difficult for a lot of people in Connecticut. I don't know exactly like how this applied in like other states, if this was also happening or it was like more primarily here. But yeah, basically, it is still pretty difficult
Mm.
to purchase a house right now.
I was gonna say, like, for you stepping into this business, it was definitely an interesting time to kind of post-pandemic, like kind of like you said, with these kind of competitive prices, and it must make it kind of so much di more difficult to sell homes. And I'm curious, just from your experience, what do you think's the biggest mistake first-time home buyers make?
That's a good question. As I told you, like I am newer to this, so I really don't have all the answers for things, but it is a seller's market. It's starting to calm down a little bit slowly. Like we're not, there yet, but
Mm.
especially like a couple years ago, it was extremely like a seller's market. They could really get almost whatever they wanted to list their house for. So I think just really taking your time, really being cautious, like looking
Mm.
at everything and try not to let like that sense of urgency get to you too much because
Mm.
there was a lot of times where people were, not even looking at a house and they were actually buying it without even seeing it because they wanted to get their offer in that quickly
Mm.
and that competitive. But if you do really like a house and you're really serious about it, I have seen like when there are these bidding wars, a lot of times if you're offering the same as someone else, but you can close faster, that's usually what sellers tend to really be interested in. Like they're like, okay, well, I'm gonna get the same amount, but if this
Mm.
person can close in 2 weeks and this one can't close for 30 days, a lot of times they're gonna go with this person. And it could be like the small, like something like that small sometimes. Because I have a family member that happened to. They were
Mm.
buying an investment property. It was really like neck and neck with the offers, but my family member was able to close in like the next 2 weeks and the other person wasn't. They gave it to her. And it was like just
Mm.
from small. So I definitely think, trying to save as much as you can is really important. Something I have been stressing to so many people is that the price of rents, as you probably know too, have like also skyrocketed.
Mm.
And to try not to fall for that because, um, excuse my dog if you can hear
Yeah, I was
her.
gonna say, I think he agrees with you.
My roommate, actually my roommate's dog.
Mm.
But that is kind of the trap that I started to notice is that like people want to buy a house, you need to save up, if you can stay home for longer,
Mm.
if you can have like a cheaper rent, maybe more roommates, but a lot of people are kind of like rushing into these really, really high rent apartments.
Mm.
And I feel like you really need to sit and think about how are you going to buy a house someday if you are funneling like $2,000 a month, $1,500 a month, as such a young person,
Mm.
what, like, how much are you really getting to save, for a house to be competitive? So just something to maybe think about for some people.
You could, in many cases, get money back, but you can't get time back. So that makes a lot of sense what you said, closing quickly. And what you were talking about makes me think, of course, we live in Connecticut, so more residential areas. Do you think you'd ever want to try to sell real estate in a city like New York?
I really don't know. I think I do like Connecticut and I guess it would just depend like where I end up.
Hmm.
You can obviously get your license in another state. I think you just have to take like that state's portion of the test.
Hmm.
You've already like passed the federal portion, so you don't, or like national portion, so you wouldn't have to take that again. So I guess it would really just depend where I end up. But for now, I'm here.
And to kind of give you another heavy hitter question, what do people think matters most when buying homes versus what actually matters?
I can't really say I necessarily could tell you what people think matters most, but I could tell you things that really do matter. Um, Obviously, like people don't understand that being pre-approved is really, really important. If you're serious about looking for a house and it's something that you want to do, I would definitely recommend go through that pre-approval process first. Find out like how much of a loan you're eligible for. Get that out of the way so that if a house does come up that you want, you don't have to waste time going through this process. You already have like a pre-approval letter. You're already eligible to get a mortgage, and this is like maybe if you're not a cash buyer. Now, being a cash buyer, that's obviously like people really like that because a lot of times, you already have the money, you don't have to wait to get a mortgage. So sometimes people, they do tend to think that that is pretty important. But what is equally as important is, being pre-approved. How is your credit? Are you going to pass all of these qualifications, if you are not maybe a cash buyer? So, yeah.
And then following up on that, I like to ask if someone was watching the housing market, which should they be looking out for?
Definitely interest rates. Like you probably should really be paying attention to the interest rates because I have heard things like, oh, they're going to go up, they're going to go down. And, it does matter because a lot of people that we know now who've like been living in their house for 20 years,
Mhm.
they might have like a 2 or 3% interest rate, which is great. But then now, we were seeing interest rates as high as like 7, 8%, that's a lot. So I think, paying attention to the interest rates and, really being kind of discerning. Like they might say, oh, the prices are dropping, but are the interest rates rising? Like you have to kind of make sure you're paying attention to that.
Following up on that as well, if someone is thinking about becoming a realtor, what advice would you have for them?
I think that I was very fortunate to already be working in a real estate company. And so I really was happy to find them. And, but if you are new, you definitely should, once you are licensed, interview with different companies, see where you feel like you fit in the best, like what feels like a good place for you. Because you do not have to, pick the first one that you go
Mhm.
to. A lot of realtors, they do switch around, they try different companies. But just making sure that you research the cost of being a realtor because obviously there are yearly fees. You do pay to take the class and take like the licensing test. Like I feel like so many careers you have to pay for like all of these things. So just making sure that it's something that you feel like you could afford and like invest a good amount of time into so that you get a return, on that investment that you're making.
And to ask you something fun I've been meaning to ask. So if you had a dream house listing, price aside, what kind of place would you want to sell?
I mean, I really love old houses. I know they're like not better for selling,
Mhm.
but I just like think they're beautiful, like big old like colonial houses. Like I think they're so cool. I probably wouldn't want to sell it,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I just think of like a really cool house, a lot of original work inside the house still kind of preserved. I feel like that would be like a cool house to sell. But I know sometimes when there's a lot of old systems in the house, it's not always a great selling point, but I just think
Mhm.
they're really cool. So I don't know.
It's more of a challenge, which would be probably more fun for yourself.
A challenge, yeah. I don't know, but that's what comes to mind.
And something that I'm also just curious about, like I'm always just certain jobs give you different perspective on things. Has becoming a realtor changed the way you view home, so to speak?
I mean, I think definitely. I think I do not own my own home. I
Mhm.
wish. But I think actually what you were making me think of was it changed my aspect a lot on business.
Hmm.
Um, Weirdly enough, because business was never like my avenue of study, like in college. It was never something I really thought I would um, do, but I did realize there's so much of a business aspect to real estate. And it also, like you said, it does make you view home ownership very differently. I think it really puts an emphasis on like how important it can be for some people to be a homeowner because that is, an asset that is yours. You're not paying a rent every month to something that you're never going to own. And for some people, renting might be a better choice for them. So it's also really about what is better for you. But I guess, yeah, it has made me definitely take it more seriously in my own approach to like how I might want to buy a home someday. And I definitely do want to be a homeowner someday. I don't think like I want to be a renter for the majority of my life, but that's just me. Some people they might feel differently. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you noted about the business aspect being something you kind of picked up on along the way. Because I know real estate, it's definitely a lot of people skills. You kind of have to be a salesperson. Can you tell us about the balance between that?
Yeah. I think one, I've noticed that it is hard being young as a realtor because I think a lot of people might look at you and be like, how old are you? What do you know? And it's like, I'm learning. They're learning too. Like you have to all do continuing education. But I think the business aspect, it's like really cool because I think it does get you to think more about like money management. And like you said, like interacting with people is really important in this job. Because like you will have open houses and stuff, and you need to know how to like greet people that come in that you don't know, and like sometimes it can help you socially. I remember like my first open house, I was like terrified. I was like, I don't know what to say. And then now I'm like, yeah, I can like do an open house and people can come in and I just kind of like start chatting to them, or I can kind of pick up the vibe of like, do they just want to look independently? Are they looking for some help? Like, but I think that it's kind of important almost for everyone to kind of know business a little bit, no matter what your career path is, because I noticed that when I'm doing real estate, like I am a different person than when I'm doing something else, because you kind of have to take your emotions out of stuff and do what's best for your client. It can't always be like, oh, well, it's like, no, like this is an important decision we're making. We need to take the best offer. It doesn't matter if you know so and so. It's like, that's just how it is.
And can you take us into the first open house to your most recent in terms of how you've evolved in this business?
Sure. So, in part of getting my license, it was definitely to help my bosses because they are extremely busy. They do a lot of business, especially in Wallingford. And sometimes realtors, they just can't be in two places at the same time. So sometimes they might ask one of us in the office to go and do an open house, and you get paid to do it. And it's a good experience. So I started off doing that. I would do open houses for my boss for his listings. You kind of have to teach yourself a little bit about the listing before you go and put on this open house. And I was definitely shy in the beginning. And it was in 2023. So, much less people were looking for houses at the time. So a lot of these open houses would be kind of, you know, small, like not many people showing up. And but now, it's a little bit more different. And then so I did that for a while. I did like some showings where I'll just go privately show someone a property or something. And then when I had my first listing, my boss actually went, he did the open house with me because he just had a feeling that this was going to be kind of a lot of people coming, and it was, and I was grateful. But then I did feel much more confident, like managing, having like 30 plus people coming in and going out, and having to answer their questions and stuff. So you get there over time, like with the confidence thing. It's a little scary at first, but you get there.
Yeah, 100%. Anything, this is something I always harp on in this show. Anything that gives you more people skills is so vital, especially like in your position where you kind of have to vibe people out at these open houses and then kind of see, like you mentioned, like what are they really here for? What do they kind of feel? How is that kind of picked up for you over time too?
I don't know what it is, but it's probably partly my other soon to be career. I'm
Mhm,
really good at reading the room.
mhm,
I kind of just like tend to know what people are, thinking sometimes or what kind of attention they want. Like a lot of people do come into an open house and, they've been to so many, they kind of know what exactly they're looking for. They
mhm.
just kind of want to be left alone. Like, yeah, go, still greet them, offer them, some like informational pages, that you bring. And then some people like they do have questions or they might want to ask you, oh, how is this area? Are you from this area? Like they might want your input on, what's it like living if you're from that area.
Amazing. And do you mind telling us about your other soon-to-be career?
Sure. Yeah. So I have been in grad school now for a year and maybe a year and 4 months or so.
Wow.
So it's a 2-year program. So I'll be done in August
Mhm.
of 2026. So I am in grad school to become a therapist. So specifically a marriage and family therapist or
Mhm.
LMT. The name confuses people. We see everyone, we see individuals too. We're more
Mhm.
like a psychotherapist, but they have chosen the name marriage and family therapist long ago. So that is technically the title. And I'm loving it so far. And that is what I want my main career to be is to be a therapist. But real estate is great because a lot of people do it on the side. They might have a main job, but they know people that want to sell their house and they can go do these transactions on the side.
I mean, there's a definite correlation between marriage counseling and real estate because I feel like that all kind of comes together. Do you kind of see that?
I think the people skills, yes. I think like
Mhm.
learning how to communicate well with people is definitely in both jobs. And like I said, like learning the business aspect is important because like being a therapist, a lot of therapists go off and open their own practices, and you do have to know how to run a business, when you go and do that. And I think not having any business skills can pose some challenges, to those trying to go out and off and start their own businesses eventually. So,
Mhm.
it's kind of a good thing to know or to kind of have some of that mindset, in you.
And what kind of drew you into therapy?
I think I always wanted to be a therapist. That
Mhm.
I am more of like I don't know what to call it, like a soft person. Like I'm
Mhm.
more like a people person. I want to work with
Mhm.
people. Like that was more my avenue. And the real estate just ended up happening along the way. Sorry about the dog.
Dog person too.
I do dog sitting too while I'm a
Mm.
student. And yeah, I always wanted to be a therapist or work in some type of like mental health psychology capacity. I did my undergrad in psychology. And then I did have to do a lot of soul searching, we'll
Mm.
say, like when it was time to start applying to grad school. And I did change like type of therapist avenue a bit when in the application process, but I got very fortunate to get into this program at the time that I did. And I think it was definitely the right choice for me. So I really like it.
Yeah, have you had any kind of experiences in therapy or being a therapist so far that have shaped you?
Yeah, I am a second year, is what they
Yeah.
call it.
Hmm.
So I do see clients every week. Starting uh, kind of summer of your second year, going into your second year, you do get clients that you see in addition to going to all your classes. So you have like an internship. And it's definitely taught me a lot of things so far. There's a
Hmm.
lot of things I did not know. I have to learn, like new platforms and stuff outside of my school on kind of like for billing and just for appointments, you have to learn how to document. That's the word I'm looking for. Like it's like a documentation,
Hmm.
platform. So there's a lot of things I wasn't even thinking about that like you kind of do have to learn. But they kind of just threw me in there and was like, here you go. And I was like, whoa, I don't even get a shadowing day at this
Hmm.
place. But I'm thankful like they did it the way they did because I ended up fine. So yeah, now I see multiple clients every week, looking for more currently because we have to get a certain number of hours and supervision and stuff to be able to graduate.
Kind of sink or swim
Yeah.
for that whole process. And I'm really curious, just dealing with people, trying to help people. I'm sure. Does it make you think about kind of like what I asked you if you think about home differently because of real estate? Does it make you think about even your own life a little differently, kind of getting to talk to other people in such a kind of intimate space?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the program, which I did not know either, in my program specifically, I don't know about others. It is doing a lot of self work. There is a lot of classes where you do have to reflect on yourself and triggers that you might have, things
Mm-hmm.
that you don't want to carry into therapy with your clients, and also learning how to take care of yourself so you're not taking all that home with you. And that has made me realize like a lot of things. But I'm really grateful for it. And then just meeting with so many different people, it's like I'm really seeing that there is just a lot of need for therapists. There's a lot of mental health problems out there, and also just people that just
Mhm.
they just went through, certain life circumstances and they just need help growing. And, it has made me view people very differently, I think, but in a
Mhm.
better way. Not like, oh, that person's terrible. It's like, no,
Mhm.
like that person, is going through X, Y, and Z and they just need help, So, yeah.
So curated empathy
Def-
through the ability to be a therapist. I'm curious, you kind of mentioned a little bit the work-life balance of that, not taking that work home. Has that been a struggle? How have you been able to find that balance?
I have really good supervision at
Mhm.
Southern and offsite at my internship. So they definitely really help me in whatever I need. If I have questions with clients, you don't have to stay awake at night trying to figure out what to do. You go to
Mhm.
supervision, you talk about cases, or in groups, like sometimes with people in your cohort, you do supervision together. So luckily, like I really don't feel like I'm taking or so far, like I really don't feel like I'm taking everything home with me. I usually
Mhm.
am just able to like leave it at the office or, the clinic or wherever I am. And yeah, I mean, I haven't had any crazy cases yet,
Mhm.
like nothing too heavy in my opinion. So hopefully, I keep doing good with that.
So it was therapist by day, realtor by night, so to speak.
I never thought about it that way, but I guess you could say that. Well, I don't know, because like honestly, it's kind of flip-flopped because like realtors definitely work more like well, they work at all random times, but probably more during
Yeah.
the day. And there's a lot of therapists that are actually seeing people at like 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. I
Mhm.
don't know, or during the day. So yeah.
Yeah, and do you see kind of any other correlations between those two lines of work in terms of, I know the people skills, but anything else? Because obviously, just how someone's house is such a foundation of their life, therapy kind of going getting into people's lives. Do you see any other correlations?
I'm sure there are more,
Mhm.
and then maybe I'm just not thinking, but like talked about the business aspect, the working with people. I think having empathy and definitely professionalism. I don't think I
Mhm.
mentioned professionalism. Like you have to be professional in both jobs. So
Mhm.
you do learn that and it's pretty universal.
And kind of professionalism in different ways, naturally, because realtor trying to sell something, therapy, you have to listen to people. So it's almost like just my imagining real estate, you're kind of giving people things, and then therapy, you're kind of taking things in. Would that make sense?
I guess in a way, yeah, you don't want to take them into mud, but you're also giving things to people in
Mhm.
therapy too, like psychoeducation. Like sometimes you're educating people on topics that, they don't know, or like they might need that information to function, things like that.
Which is a very good point because naturally, the therapist is going to give back to their patient. So yeah, for those viewing, you might notice a little bit of a lighting difference on my end. We had to take a bit of a intermission, but yeah, and you might also see like my cat in the background, my cat
Oh,
Jack. It's his first appearance on the show, so some new things are happening even this deep into things. But I also wanted to ask you to kind of circle back to therapy, Riley. I'm curious, what surprised you most doing therapy as a therapist, like in that act of being a therapist versus just learning about it?
yeah, I think what surprised me the most is kind of like I said earlier, like you kind of do just get thrown into it. And you've been in school learning for about a year, but really it's not that much time. Like, there is so much that you kind of gets thrown at you at once. So you haven't had the chance to like master anything yet. And you still usually won't for like the remainder of time you're in school. So just realizing that a lot of it you're capable of doing, but you kind of just have to do it. And it's kind of scary at first. And there's still some clients I get where I'm like, you know, I I don't know. Like I don't know how, what to do in this situation, but yeah, I think realizing a lot of your skills just kind of come from within as well.
I'm sure on your end, there's so much training involved. I'm curious what happens kind of when you have to throw away the rule book, so to speak, and kind of go with your own instincts. Have you faced situations like that?
I think sometimes like maybe you might have a focus of what the session might be about. And then, the client might throw a curveball and be like, actually, something really terrible just happened. I really need to talk to you about this.
Hmm.
So there is like an aspect of it where it's like you can plan, but sometimes you really can't plan for everything.
Hmm.
Of course, you got to always follow, your codes of ethics,
Yeah.
whatnot. But yeah, like sometimes, you might. be a little bit more supportive or be a little bit more caring if you see like that individual is really like not well today and just needs a softer approach, maybe.
I'm also curious, what do you wish more people understood about the concept of therapy itself?
That I wish it was more normalized and I wish
Mm,
there wasn't such a stigma.
mhm,
I think a lot of people look at the concept of therapy and some are totally chill with it and they're like, oh, yeah, that's good, that's helpful. And then some people are like, oh, God, no, I don't need that. Or, oh, no, like you're crazy if you're going there. And I really wish that people would not view it that way because I think a lot of people would really be surprised that when you do go to therapy and you're with somebody good, you could do a lot of really good growth and self work. Like me, myself, I go to therapy. Most of the people in my cohort do go to therapy. It's recommended while you're in the program. And you really will notice that you learn a lot of skills and emotional regulation and things like that that you might not have had before.
and how does that kind of feel, kind of being on both ends of it?
You know, they teach you a lot about countertransference, and
Mm,
it's kind of crazy. Like, there are so many times where a client is telling me about something, and I've literally gone through it myself, or
mm,
I really know, like, I really understand what they're talking about. And it's kind of cool because it's like at least, you know, I'm seeking my own therapy to work through those things. But I can't let them know that, like,
mm,
yeah, I went through that.
mhm.
Some people use like a bit of self-disclosure in their practice, and that's okay. But yeah, just not putting too much of yourself and your own experiences on the person is something that, you know, is important to work on.
Yeah, so kind of back onto the concept of balance, kind of like we mentioned work-life balance. This is almost like therapist to someone in therapy balance. It's
You have
interesting.
to
And
have
yeah, and I'm also curious if you just have any advice for someone wanting to kind of enter this therapy field like you have. Do you have any advice for someone kind of in the current state of things?
I think if you are interested in being a therapist, then I highly recommend. I think it could be a really great and rewarding career. And I think there's like a lot of different places you can work and growth that you can do. It's not a very like stagnant like type of career, in my
Mhm.
opinion. I do think that, you know, it is a process, and I honestly didn't know how much of a process it was until I was already in it. So just being patient, I recommend if it's something you really want to do, I do think it's worth it. Just go through that 2 to 3 year master's program, you know, take some time to figure out which one is right for you because there's different types of therapy programs and stuff. And then, you know, you do have to do supervision after still when you're new in the field. You still have to get certain number of hours. I mean, you're getting paid, but you're not getting like normal, I guess, pay that you would when you're fully licensed. But like,
Mhm.
just go with it, I say, and trust the process because it'll be worth it in the end.
I feel like both of your careers are not stagnant, or with real estate and therapy, that I feel like they're both kind of ever evolving and changing. So that's another kind of correlation I feel like they both have. And to kind of move beyond just speaking about your careers, I'm curious to learn more about you. What's something that people might not know about you, like a fun fact?
I feel like in class this happens a lot. They'll be like, okay, tell us your name, tell us a fun fact. And I'm like, I
Mhm.
don't have any fun facts. Um, hmm. I don't know. I guess like I used to be a really, really shy person and really
Mhm.
did not talk at all. And I think that now at this point in my life, I have kind of been forced into being really independent. And I've worked like many roles like at my university and had to really interact with a lot of people. So yeah, I think sometimes you never really know like the growth that someone has done. So don't doubt yourself, you know, like don't underestimate where you could be because it could be like me, where I like was super shy, did not talk to people, and now it's my job to talk to people.
Yeah, yeah, in different ways, kind of like we noted. And it's also just like those experiences like in college and through work that get you out of your shell and that get you to grow. And those are just great things to just jump in head first into. And I'm also curious, what's one thing you love and one thing you strongly dislike?
I love dogs. As
Hmm.
I mentioned before, I do pet sitting. That's like a
Hmm.
fun job for me. So yeah, I mean, I like animals in general, but really love dogs. And then something I hate, I'm like a neat freak, so I'm just messes. I'm such a clean, organized person. I'm like, oh my God, I can
Mhm.
deal with it sometimes, but yeah, I'm definitely, my friends know I can be really annoying about where stuff goes, and I got to put everything in a certain spot.
I mean, that makes perfect sense because those open houses, they have to look all cleaned up. So it makes sense that your house is cleaned up. And of course, mentioning your dog, of course, we had your dog in the background, my cat in the background. So we've had some animals being represented here on this episode and kind of moving forwards from that. I'm curious, what are some of your hopes and dreams professionally or in general, and just where you see yourself going in both of these fields?
I mean, as for real estate, I hope that as I get more into my therapist career and I find that balance, that I can return to doing that more on the side, and hopefully I think when I have more of the resources to market myself a little bit better, because marketing can be expensive and it's kind of hard when you're in college to do that. So I'm hoping when I have a little bit more stability that I can kind of get more serious about it. And then as for being a therapist, it is like my, overall job and goal. So I really would hopefully maybe one day open my own practice when I feel comfortable. I feel like I've learned a good amount from others. Overall, just really want to make an impact on people. I really want to be very knowledgeable, though. I have read a good amount of books so far, just outside of class, like really trying to educate myself better. And I really do love the university setting. So I am hoping that maybe someday I will also get to teach, like in a program similar to mine, possibly. So who knows?
Amazing. And to give back to all the people that kind of want to be in your shoes through teaching. And something I'm also curious about, what are some of your favorite movies and why do they resonate with you?
I think one of my favorite movies has always been Mean Girls. I like a lot of early 2000s like movies.
Hmm.
I have probably watched it, oh my God, like over a dozen times. I don't know what it was. It's just such a classic. I think it's
Hmm.
funny. But I think like coming from like a therapist perspective now,
Hmm.
you really look at that as like, you never really know what people are going through.
Hmm.
I feel like at some point in that movie, everyone kind of admits that like
Hmm.
that scene, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but there is like a scene where everyone like raises their hand if they've been like bullied by this like one girl at the school or something.
Hmm.
And so it's like, I don't know, eventually in the end, I feel like they kind of find like some commonalities between each other, but I just think it's funny overall. But did you also ask books or just movies?
You could talk about books too, especially if that's an interest of yours.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes I am a professional yapper, so if I ever
Okay.
miss your question, just tell me. I'll get lost in talking. But yeah, books, I'm really trying to get into my reading era. So I've been
Hmm.
reading this year. Attached is one of my favorite books so far. That one I actually did listen to on Audible instead of reading it. There are some books that I like prefer to listen to. And that one's really good, talking about attachment theories. And that is something that I could go on and on for like 80 hours about. So I'm not going to do that. But it's a really good book. I think a lot of people should know that information, and it will really make so much sense to you, like why you react to certain situations in certain ways. That it's just so much stuff we like never were taught and didn't know about. And then I also like the Let Them theory. That was a popular book. Mel Robbins, she actually, has a podcast. I don't know if you've seen it,
One of
but
my favorites.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's great. So that
Hmm.
book is great. I should recommend that to you then, since you know her.
Hmm.
I am re-listening to it right now
Hmm.
because I like her voice. So that was another one where it's like I wanted to listen to it because it's herself that recorded the book. Um, really, really good lessons in that book. I know Mel is not like a certified psychologist or, something, but she really hits the nail on the head with like everything she's saying. It's all really true. Like I feel like very everyday normal people can really grasp these concepts that like, you know, everything is out of your control, and we spend so much time and energy like trying to control other people and other things. And if we could just let that go, we can live like a lot more peacefully.
Control the controllable, pretty much.
Yeah,
To kind of summarize. And yeah, and then those books are really applicable to anyone, even not someone who doesn't aspire to be a therapist. It's great to understand that, to bring that kind of into your life. And thank
totally.
you for flipping the page on this incredible episode of the Zicast and being here with us, Riley.
Thank you so much. This was actually really fun. Feel free to have me again if you ever want to.
Well,
I'll
trust me,
definitely.
I would love to. You're my first realtor and my first therapist. So thank you so much for bringing in both of those perspectives. Thank you so much for telling us about these two fields that are so important and are both ever changing, especially in these times. And thank you just for sharing so much insight and for being such a great guest. And thank you so much for your time, Riley.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. And as always, I'm Ryan Ziaks for the Zicast, where everyone has a story. Signing off. Thank you so much for watching.